you today to read. And boy, it's exactly what we're talking about. Take a look. Can somebody read the title to me? Or to us? Yeah. The people who hugged the trees. Absolutely. This story is an Indian legend that, to tell you the truth, is more than 200 years old. It's actually a lot more than 200 years old. And it's about one person, one girl, who grew into a woman who made such a difference for her country, for her neighborhood first, to start with her village, for her state, for her country, and now for our whole world. Because it got us all thinking about what one person can do to really help to protect our environment so that we have lots of clean, fresh air to breathe. So, would you like to hear the story? One of the things I love about the book is the illustrations are absolutely positively beautiful. It's set, actually, it's in Rajasthan, India. So that is the name of the setting of the story. Our main character is Amrita. Take a look. Gorgeous. Look at how pretty this is. So in long ago India, when warrior princess ruled the land, there lived a girl who loved the trees. Her name was Amrita. Amrita lived in a poor village of mud houses on the edge of a great desert. Just outside the village grew a forest. Now every day, Amrita ran to the forest, her long braid dancing behind her. And when she found her favorite tree, she threw her arms around it. "Tree," she cried, "you are so tall, and your leaves are so green. How could we ever live without you?" For Amrita knew that the trees shaded her from that hot desert sun. The trees guarded her and her family and her whole village, actually, from the howling desert sandstorms. And where those trees grew, there was precious water to drink, right there on the edge of the desert, where the desert and the forest met. The trees guarded her from the howling desert sandstorms. Before she left the forest, she kissed her special tree and whispered, "Tree, if you are ever in trouble, I will protect you." The tree whispered back with a rustle of its leaves. I actually never thought of the rustle of leaves being the way the tree talks, but in a way it is. It's voice, isn't it, huh? One day, just before the monsoon rains, a giant sandstorm whirled in from the desert. In minutes, the sky turned dark as night. Lightning cracked the sky, and wind whipped the trees as Amrita dashed for her house. And from inside, she could hear the sand battering against the shutters that had been locked closed. After the storm ended, there was sand everywhere. In her clothes, in her hair, you know what? Even in her food. Oof. But she was safe, and so was her village, because the trees had stood guard against the worst of the storm. Legends are based on true stories. But what happens is that other people pass on the legend, word mouth to mouth, and people listen to the story. And sometimes little pieces get added to the story that isn't exactly the way it happened, but it's mostly the way it happened. Really good question. As Amrita grew, so did her love for the trees. Soon, she had her own children, and she took them to the forest with her. "These are your brothers and sisters," she said to her children. And think about that. She's telling them that the trees are her brothers and sisters. What is she really saying to them? What is she trying to explain in little people talk? Yeah?
That the trees should never harm them.
Exactly. You should take care of the trees just like you take care of your family. Never harm them. They shade us from the hot desert sun. They guard us from the terrible sandstorms. They show us where to find water to drink. And then she taught her children to hug the trees, just as she did. Each day, when she left the forest, Amrita fetched water from the village well. She carried the water in a large clay pot, balanced on top of her head. One morning by the well, Amrita spotted a troop of men armed with heavy axes. Do you know what an axe is? Do you know what it is? It's a tool, isn't it? Can somebody tell me what it looks like? Because there isn't a good picture of it here. What does it look like?
It's very sharp.
It's very sharp, isn't it, on the end, huh? And it's a stick about this long, right? And that it's meant to be swung. And what's the purpose of an axe? What's the purpose? To cut down a tree or to chop wood. Exactly right. Uh-oh, this doesn't sound good, does it? There's a troop of men heading toward the trees with heavy axes. No. They were headed toward that forest. Cut down every tree you can find. Amrita heard the chief axeman say, the Maharaja needs plenty of wood to build his new fortress. Now the Maharaja was a very powerful prince who ruled over many, many villages. His word was law. So what did the men have to do? They had to cut down the trees because the Maharaja's word was law. That meant no arguing. You had to do it. Do you think that the axemen wanted to cut down the trees?
No.
What they wanted was to please who? The Maharaja, absolutely. Now Amrita was really afraid. Oh no, the tree cutters, I know they're going to destroy our forest, she thought. Then we'll have no shade from the sun, we'll have no protection from the sandstorms, we'll have no way to find water in the desert. She ran toward the forest and hid. From her hiding place, she began a whack, whack, whack of those axes cutting into her beloved trees. Suddenly, Amrita saw the chief axeman swing his blade right toward her own special tree. Now, just think about that. Imagine, this is a special tree that you have grown up with, that you've loved for your whole life, that you see how it protected you through that terrible sandstorm, and all of a sudden, it's under attack. What would you want to do? You'd want to save it. Absolutely. Do not cut down the trees, she cried, and she jumped right in front of her own tree. Stand back, thundered the axeman. Oh, please, please leave my tree, she begged. Chop me instead. She hugged the tree with all her strength. And there she is, trying so hard to protect her tree, her beloved tree. The axeman shoved her away, and he swung his blade anyway. He could see only the tree he had been ordered to cut down, because who said he had to do it? Maharaja. Absolutely. Again and again, the axeman chopped until Amrita's tree crashed to the ground. She knelt down, her eyes filled with tears. Her arms tenderly grasped the tree's dying branches. Because once the tree is cut down, it has no way to get its food, which comes from where? The roots, absolutely. Now I will tell you, boys and girls, that there's two ways that trees feed. One is through their roots, but the other way, interestingly enough, is they have a magical ability. What's the magical ability?
To get the power of the sun.
Pardon?
The sun.
The sun, absolutely. It's a big, long word. Who knows what that big, long word is? Yes.
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, absolutely. And And plants are the only living things on our planet that are able to make their own food. But you know what? Once they're separated from their roots, they can't do it anymore. So this tree was truly dying. When the news of Amrita's tree reached the village, men and women and children came running into the forest. One after another, they jumped in front of all of the trees and hugged them. What were they trying to do? Save the trees, absolutely. Wherever the tree cutters tried to chop, those villagers stood right in their way. The Maharaja will hear of this, threatened the chief axeman. But the people, they would not give in. Boys and girls, look, can you see in this picture here? Can you see the colored clothing of those people standing in the way of the trees to protect them? The Maharaja was furious when the axeman returned empty-handed. "Where is the wood I sent you to chop?" he stormed. "Oh, Your Highness, we tried to cut down the trees for your fortress, but wherever we went, those villagers, they hugged the trees to stop us." Maharaja sliced the air with his battle sword. These tree huggers, they will pay for disobeying me." So he mounted his fastest horse and rode out for the forest. Behind him came many soldiers riding long-legged camels and elephants with jeweled tusks. This Maharaja, he is not kidding, is he? He means what? Business. And it sounds like war, too. The Maharaja found the people gathered by the village well. "Who dared to defy my orders?" he demanded. Amrita hesitated a moment, and then she stepped forward. "Oh, great prince, we could not let the axemen destroy our forest," she said. "Why, these trees shade us from the baking desert sun. They protect us from the sandstorms that would kill our crops and bury our village. They show us where to find precious water to drink. Without these trees, I cannot build my fortress," the Maharaja argued back. "Well, without these trees, we cannot survive," Amrita replied. The Maharaja glared at her. And then you know what he said? What do you guess? How many people think he said, "Okay, axemen, go back. We'll find another plan"? How many people think that? Good. How many people think he said, "Forget about it, we're cutting it down"? Let's see what happens. You ready?
And let's see.
Are they marching away or are they marching toward? Toward. So, the villagers raced to the forest as the soldiers flashed their swords. Step by step, the soldiers grew closer as the sand swirled around their feet and the leaves shivered on their branches. Just when the soldiers reached the trees, the wind came to the rescue. The wind roared in from the desert, driving the sand so hard that the axemen and the Maharaja's soldiers could barely see. The soldiers ran from the storm, shielding themselves behind the trees. Amrita clutched her special tree, and those villagers hid their faces as thunder shook the forest. The storm was worse than any the people had ever seen before. Finally, when the wind was silent, they came slowly out of the forest. Amrita, she brushed the sand from her clothes and looked around. Broken tree limbs were scattered everywhere. The storm was so strong. Grain from the crops in the field littered the ground. It was all over the place. Around the village well, drifts of sand were piled high. And Amrita saw that only the trees had had stopped the desert from destroying the well and the rest of the village. Now, I want you to think about sand. Does it feel soft and silky? Or kind of coarse and scratchy? It's coarse and scratchy. That's why when you're building a piece of furniture, or maybe when you're refinishing one, you use something called what to smooth it off? Sandpaper. So sand is very rough, and it really smooths away the wood. Do they want their well to be smoothed away? No, because it's going to be full of sand, and there won't be any way for them to get any water to drink. Just beyond the well. Who do you think is standing there? Take, everybody. Who is that? The Maharaja. There he is, right behind the well, and he stared at that forest. He thought for a long time and was very quiet. So were all the villagers. And suddenly he spoke. You have shown great courage and great wisdom to protect your trees. From this day forward, trees, your trees, will not be cut. Your forest will always remain a green place here in the desert. What happened next? Party! What do you see in the sky? Fireworks, absolutely. Everybody was so totally relieved. People sang and they danced long into the night. And boys and girls, those fireworks lit up the sky for many, many hours. In the forest, the children strung flowers and bright colored paper through the branches of the trees. And where Amrita's tree had fallen, they marked a special place so they would never forget the tree's great sacrifice. Many, many years have passed since that day, but some people say that Amrita still comes to the forest to hug the trees. Trees, she whispers, you are so tall, and your leaves are so green. How could we ever live without you? For Amrita knows that the trees shade the people from the hot desert sun. The trees guard the people from the howling desert sandstorms, and where the trees grow, there is water, and it is a good place for people to live.